And now it's time to dive into Egypt's heritage with a special panel discussion, History and Culture, Perceptions of Egypt. This engaging discussion will be moderated by Malak Fouad, founder of A&T Media and host of the renowned podcast, What I Did Next. In this session, a lineup of experts will share their insights on Egypt's cultural identity and historical narrative. Mahmoud Sabit, Egyptian historian and political commentator. Bettany Hughes, award-winning historian, author, and broadcaster. Louis Barthelemy, multidisciplinary artist and designer. Shollenbarger, luxury travel journalist and editor at Financial Times. Sherif, creative director and event and film producer.
Hello. Hi, everybody. And I want to start, please, first of all, by saying what an amazing event this has been so far. It's been inspiring. We have had discussions by the cream of the crop of Egypt, telling us stories of success, but also stories where we need to improve. And I think it's vital that we hear home truths and not just sugarcoat things. I think we're in a room with people who can actually make things better. And I think it's vital. And thank you, Lamia, and your team. It's been phenomenal so far. Thank you. So I'm not going to introduce the panel because Nardine did it, and I'm trying to save time. I know we're all a bit tired and hungry, and I want to give up as much time to the discussion because we've been working on this for many weeks. We've been meeting on Zooms to have in-depth discussions about really what can we do with this question. So what I want to do is I want to really begin by thinking about what do we mean by perception. Perception is in effect reality because what we perceive is often what actually exists. So I'd like to start off by doing something a little bit, it can be viewed as a bit gimmicky, but it's a tool that is used in marketing and very often used in self-help retreats. Many of you in the room will know this technique. It's called the Johari window. It's a technique that is mainly used for individuals, but I think it can be used in terms of perception and specifically for Egypt. The technique says that we can gain self-awareness, and it's a popular tool. The theory addresses what you know about yourself, what others know about you, what is hidden to you and others, and what is not known by either side. If we look at it in the context of Egypt, we can think about what do Egyptians know about themselves? What do foreigners see and know about us? What is hidden from foreigners and us, and what is known by neither? These are the kinds of questions that the panel will look at and will try and find solutions for. The other important point I want to make, and then I'm going to hand over to our distinguished first guest, Mahmoud Sabit. Our panelists are going to frame their talks in terms of successful case studies that we can use to find proper solutions for these problems. They're going to be case studies that are brought from the Egyptian experience, but also from experiences across the world. We have some very distinguished people with a lot of experience, both within the country and without. And then the other important point is we've constantly been trying to refine our discussion to see where are the common points between public and private partnership. If this group is anything, it is that marriage between the two. And we need our solutions to be viable and actually doable. So, we're going to begin with Mahmoud Sabit, an expert in the 19th and 20th century Egyptian modern history, with a special emphasis on looking at things through the lens of his extensive family archive. Thank you, Mahmoud.
I need that, yes, thank you. Thank you for the very nice introduction. I think one should really begin by saying that Egyptian history does not end with the pharaohs, and there is an immense body of history and a historical continuum subsequent to the pharaonic period. This is a very important, simply because Egypt is, after all, still here, and yet it has had a 7,000-year-old history. The 19th century is a very important century for us, and unfortunately, it has been, in many respects, mislaid, and which is very unfortunate because it is a major success story. It is taken out of a semi-Middle Ages and brought into the modern world almost within 20 years. This happens not just because of the viceroy of that period, Muhammad Ali, but rather because the population itself was sufficiently inspired to also work with Muhammad Ali, and it is a symbiotic relationship that brought about this change. And it is an immense change. Within 80 years, Egypt had become a major economic power in this region. It had many advantages to begin with, one of which, I think, which is a very important one that should be mentioned, is the fact that Egyptians are products of institutions, not products of minorities, not products of anything other than an identity with Egypt. This is a form of citizenship which has been within Egypt for millennia. And this is a great strength, and this gives it a degree of modernity already. Today, we seem to have written off this history, which I think is very unfortunate, simply because history is within itself a sense of identity. It gives us our identity, because after all, it is our forebears who participate in this historical continuum. Therefore, forgetting about it, we lose a lot of our identity when we do so. And when that does happen, and I might add, this has also happened for periods prior to that, from the Middle Ages onwards, we begin to neglect the legacy that was left to us from these periods. And here I'm mentioning the fact that Cairo has probably one of the richest vocabulary of Islamic architecture in the world, simply because it survived the Mongols, survived the Crusades, etc. We have the full vocabulary of Islamic art there, yet it's been allowed to be neglected. It's beginning to be restored now. There's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot of stories. In fact, the human element and the human story that's involved within the Egyptian historical continuum is fascinating, and yet it is not very well known, but is very well chronicled. We know it. It's all there. It's just not been looked into. And so, thank you.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Yes, I think definitely we have lessons to learn from that particular period. Very important lessons. Bettany, welcome.
Thank you.
We're thrilled to have you in Cairo. It's a real honor for us that you're here.
Oh, it's such a delight. I'm going to be very short because I'm aware it's lunchtime, but a total joy to be here. As some of you know, I passionately love Egypt, but what you might not know is I do that because I was introduced to the culture of Egypt by a single teacher, as was spoken about in the previous panel. And when I was 5, I decided to be a historian because of that introduction. So Egypt has given me my life. So I sit here with humility and total gratitude. So just to say thank you to everyone into the room, and Lamia and Sir Mohammed Mansour for physically getting me into this chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Bettany. Why don't you give us a little bit of a sense of how you view this perception question?
Well, I think as well as perception, it's interesting to think what culture is and what history is. So this is the title of this panel. I mean, one thing, as has been said, I'm a historian, but I also I'm a producer in the cultural industries, both in what's slightly depressingly termed old media, television, and new media and future tech. So I think constantly about the past and also about the possibilities and products of the future. And one thing I see as an absolute constant through time, and I'm not just talking centuries or thousands of years, but tens of thousands of years, is that we are hardwired to seek culture in our lives in times both good and bad. So if you look back 40,000 years ago to the Swabian Alps in Germany, people were making beautiful sculptures of lion-headed men out of mammoth ivory that took 372 hours to make. And this was a time where disease and death and attack by large mammals was absolutely certain, but they decided to put that time aside for culture. And again, in the Bronze Age, so the height of the Pharaonic period that's so celebrated in times of total war, people in Greece and Lebanon and even in Italy would order up artifacts made in Egypt, because at that time, made in Egypt was the kind of counter of what made in China today for us means cheap. Made in Egypt in the historical period meant something that was extraordinary. And people, even though they didn't have enough to eat, would choose to take this culture. So culture really matters to us. And I think we can understand that when we look at the word culture itself, because culture isn't a thing, it's not a product, it's not a place you go to. Culture is a process. It comes from the Latin colere, to cultivate. So culture takes work. It's more to do with tilling the soil, of addressing the world with respect, of cherishing, of really trying to make things grow. And I was very interested in the previous panel where there was a discussion about the GEM and the restoration labs in the GEM. And as was very flatteringly described when I was introduced this morning, we made a series, a 4-hour series about Egyptian culture. Some of the scenes were in the restoration labs of the GEM. And those programs have been watched by 450 million people worldwide in 120 countries, and increased the tourism to Egypt by 4 times in the UK, because people were interested in that process of culture, of seeing it's almost kind of culture deconstructed. So culture matters, history matters as well. So fascinating what you're saying about history being identity. And we now know that, I'm a passionate historian and archaeologist, as you can tell, but now science is on our side, ladies and gentlemen, because neuroscientists tell us that memory isn't a sort of optional extra. It doesn't exist as a kind of chest of drawers that you can pull out of your brain. Memory itself is a network, the default mode network in our minds, and memory is also where imagination and identity sit. So we cannot think about ourselves, we cannot have a thought about the future of the world without accessing a memory of some kind. So at a molecular level, we're creatures of memory. And more than that, we now know scientifically that we're born with memory, genetic memory, and more than that, we're born with something called symbolic memory. So before every child on Earth takes its first breath, they are born with an understanding that the pyramid matters, because that's something that our grandfathers talked about. So we're born knowing that these things are important. And I just wanted to... Everybody's been a bit down on the pyramids today, I think, and said, Egypt is more than the pyramids, and we know that. But they are also extraordinary. And the Great Pyramid is the most stupendous building ever created, I would argue, by human hand. As are the other wonders of the world that exist in Egypt, of course, the Great Lighthouse of Alexandria. So I just wanted to finish on wonder, because wonder matters in our lives. We're actually making a new series on the 7 wonders and using very exciting new tech, new AR tech, as well as old school media to communicate that idea. And when you see the great wonders of the world, as you know, the wonders list, the original wonders list, was also written in Egypt, in Alexandria. And the original 7 wonders list wasn't something that was dead and passive. It was an active encouragement for people to travel, to visit these wonders, to have a haptic, authentic, once-in-a-lifetime experience of them. And that's because the same is now as it was then, that wonder makes us engage, and if we engage, we understand, and if we understand, we care, and if we care, we love. So my experience and my challenge to everyone in this room to make history, culture, arts and wonder in our world that can feel a little unwonderful at times, an act of love.
Thanks, Bettany. That's truly amazing. And underlying everything that we're talking about, of course, is the power of soft power. And contrary to the panel just before us, where it was hard edges, we are talking about the soft and the beautiful. And these are things that touch the soul, that we have emotional connections to. And you, as someone who was raised in the UK, to have been touched at the age of 5 by our soft power is very emotional for us as Egyptians. So that was really lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add, it's also hard economic power. So when people wonder at things, they put money in their pockets and they pay to come here.
Of course. Louis Barthelemy is next. Louis doesn't need a lot of introduction at all. I think a lot of you know him. An amazing illustrator, an artist, a lover of culture and a lover of art, and a big proponent of sustaining craftsmanship, encouraging crafts, and finding a way to keep that moving into the future. Go ahead, Louis.
Thank you so much, Malak, for this introduction, and thank you, Lamia, for having us here among such committed and genuine voices. So, as Malak just mentioned, I'm an artist, a multidisciplinary artist, and my work is very much rooted in deep conversations and collaboration with craft masters in Egypt and beyond, from Benin to Uzbekistan, and trying to revive and anchor those traditions which are passed on generation after generation into a contemporary narrative, a contemporary conversation, and trying to channel those crafts and direct them in a way that they become attractive and compelling to a younger audience today, and not remain stuck as museum relics or kitsch souvenirs found in shops. I think it's important to see craft and those communities of makers as an ambassador of culture, ambassador of an identity, which is extremely precious in a very globalized and standardized world. And I think these profiles really have to be dignified and celebrated. So what I've experienced from all those years in Egypt is that very often this know-how, this preciosity is undervalued, overlooked, and very often stuck. It isn't being passed on. The craft masters I work with tend to be aging, and there is an alarming question that I keep asking myself: who will take over? Where will those communities be in a generation or two? And I think as much as individual engagement and commitment is powerful, I think there is a drastic need of having an institutional and governmental framework to firstly perhaps identify those communities and train them, provide maybe it's a fiscal system or a granting system that allow them visibility, social recognition, and a higher perception, you see.
Can I jump in, Louis, and ask you specifically about something that you mentioned to us when we were discussing this? You mentioned to us an NGO that you came across in Azerbaijan.
Uzbekistan,
sorry.
Yes.
That was very grassroots, that was really drilling down into the community and how to really help communities. Can you give us a very quick synopsis on that?
Of course, yes. I think this is a very interesting case study. I've been fortunate to be invited in Uzbekistan multiple times to work on this coming biennial, which will open in Central Asia, in Uzbekistan in September. And ACDF UZ, founded in 2017, it's a state-owned initiative with partial private financing. They've mapped out artisans across the country, which is very vast, from Bukhara to Samarkand, Margilan, up in the mountains near Tajikistan, trying to identify those communities and providing healthy framework and infrastructures to them all across the country. They've been doing this for multiple years, and I think they've reached a point now where the communities of craft people are existent. It's been proliferating in the country. They're making a living out of it. They're not just called craft people, but they actually have a status of craft masters. I think even semantically, this is important to highlight. And they're now, for this biennial, inviting contemporary artists from all around the world, about 60, half of them from Central Asia, the others from Japan to Latin America and Europe, to engage and produce exclusively everything locally within those clusters of artisans.
And this is a model that can easily be replicated in Egypt.
Absolutely, because from what I've seen in Uzbekistan, of course we're talking about other techniques, but there is in Egypt, whether you go to Armim, Upper Egypt, or even the Delta around Foa, the most skilled hands and minds that I've ever met, really. I think seeing sometimes the Spartan environment in which they work is a killer. It's extremely poignant to see that there is unfortunately no collective recognition and admiration for what they're carrying on their humble shoulders. I think a formal, organized plan, which would be state empowered,
Yes.
is crucial at this point.
Yeah. Thank you, Louis.
Pleasure.
We're going to move on to Zach. Zach Sherif is an Egyptian, but who spent many years in America. He's an interior designer. He's an ex-fashion editor at Condé Nast. He's a retailer. He had his own line of shops with Bit Sherif for a long time. He's now in Egypt for a lot more of his year, and he's bringing his know-how back home with very interesting ideas, very out-of-the-box ideas, and ambitious ideas. And I know that this is the right audience to hear those ideas. And so please, Zach, share with us your thoughts.
Thank you, Malak. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you, Lamia, of course, for having us. We love you. We love what you're doing. So perception, Egypt. For me, it's always been mystery, magic, history, and arts. And I think most of the world probably sees it in that simplistic a way. There's a romanticism about Egypt, which is centuries old, and will continue for many centuries to come. And I think coming to this panel and looking at the subject matter, and doing a lot of research of my own over the last year and a half about Egyptian revivals, the multitude of Egyptian revivals that have happened over the centuries, where Egypt becomes a raving fad and the whole world becomes Egyptomania, obsessed with Egypt and anything Egyptian. And I think what I'd like to say in this context is that I think we need to involve the public and private sectors together to narrate the next Egyptian revival. And I think it could be staged over a year with museum openings all simultaneously in all the major world capitals, and collaborations with major fashion houses throughout the world, feature films related to Egypt, everything launched within a span of 1 year, and create the next Egyptian revival. And that's kind of where I'm.
So it would be a concerted effort to bring lots of different strands together across different artistic industries and do like one mega big sort of bang in 1 year.
In one single year, sporadically throughout, small collaborations, not massive projects, tiny small projects, collections, art exhibits throughout the world, but all timed to fall in 1 year.
Yeah. I think also underpinning that needs to be another thing that's very close to your heart, which is the beautification of the country itself. So from a foundational level, improving neighborhoods, improving infrastructure, which we're very far ahead with now, since we've been doing this for at least 5 or 6 years. We've come a very long way, but there's more to do. I think the GEM is a fantastic window into who we are today. It's
brilliant.
Phenomenal what has happened at GEM.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic calling card for us. But I think that beautification issue is also an underpinning issue.
Absolutely. Beautification is essential because that's so much a part of the perception. People perceive Egypt in this very romanticized way with so much excitement. When they hit the ground, that excitement kind of fades a little bit. I mean, there's, a little bit of like shock and awe, for lack of a better word, I mean, there's...
We want people to return multiple times.
I mean,
and right now they don't.
I mean, they're fascinated and maybe slightly horrified. I don't know. I mean...
Amy's laughing in the audience, a little too loudly.
Point being, beautification is essential to our perception as a nation. I mean, we need iconic public artworks. We need parks and tree canopies. We need the world and our own citizens to perceive us.
We have a good example of this already that's been done in the last 20 years, which is the Azhar Park.
Yes,
A
exactly.
stunning
Which should be
piece
replicated.
of greenery in what used to be wasteland.
Yeah.
And it's in a touristic area next to the Khan Khalil. It's a phenomenal success. Yeah. So we want more projects like that.
But there's got to be a design council or a panel between the private and public sector that makes these decisions, these critical decisions of how our cities are designed. It can't be ashwa'i, it can't be...
It has to be a conscious effort.
It has to be a design effort.
Yeah.
With urban planners and architects and major designers who are a dream team of people who are responsible for how Cairo looks, how each neighborhood looks, respecting its authenticity and respecting its architecture and enhancing it and either bringing it back to its old glory or even taking it a step further with iconic statements, which Egypt is known for, iconic statements. Yep. We are iconic.
And we know how to make the big statement.
We can make it big statements again now.
Absolutely.
Because we have amazing contemporary architects and contemporary sculptors and contemporary who also need to be in the game. Their voices are critical.
Yeah.
And, beauty is infectious. Once something becomes beautiful, people's psychology changes. They won't litter as much. They'll start planting their own things in front of their own houses. Beauty really is infectious. We just need to get that ball rolling.
Yep.
And I think the Egyptian people are so creative and so in love with this country, their country. I mean, there will be a renaissance. It just needs to be a coordinated plan, and it should be a part of a greater plan to create a new Egyptian revival to Qasr al-Dunya.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. I think that's great. Thank you. Last but not least is my new best friend. We spent 6 hours in the car driving from Cairo yesterday. We didn't know each other before. We know everything about each other now.
Really well.
Maria Shollenbarger is the travel editor of the How to Spend It magazine from the FT, a seasoned traveler with a lot of experience about what works, what doesn't work, what should work. And so please, Maria, give us your thoughts.
First of all, this has been an amazing event. Thank you for having me. Amy, you were amazing. I'm a new fangirl wherever you're sitting. I can't see you. Everything you saw, everything you said, I think is absolutely brilliant. I am based in London because I work for the FT, but I have the privilege, of spending several months a year in Florence, in Italy, which is like living in a constantly evolving iterating, experiment in case studies for how to create environments that keep things alive, both for the people who live there, the Florentines, and for the millions of people who visit it. Most of you, some of you might know that Italy is the second most visited country in the world. Most of you know it has a patrimony not dissimilar at all to that of Egypt. It goes back to early antiquity, all the way through to very important 19th and 20th century artists, built environments, 21st century also. And Florence, in particular, is really rich in case study opportunities because they've had to think very carefully in this little medieval city. It doesn't lend itself very well to the kind of visitors, particularly mass tourism, that is now kind of inundating it. Things that pop into mind, the Palazzo Strozzi, which is a very wonderful contemporary art museum that hadn't even really been put to use 15 years ago until a foundation was created around it that was a really good example of that public-private marriage, which, as Dr. Honem called it, an uncomfortable but evolving marriage. I think it's pretty good in Italy. I've been impressed with where it's gone. And what was great about the Fondazione Palazzo Strozzi was it involved Florentine founding families. Leonardo Ferragamo was one of the early chairmen, but also people from the private sector. Lorenzo Binismaghi was one of the earliest chairmen as well. There were museum directors on it, ministers on it, but people who also really put their money and their ideas behind it to propel it forward. And there's a Tracy Emin show on there right now. And 2 months before, there was a Helen Frankenthaler show, so which both makes Florentines very proud and re-engages them in the idea of this building that's 850, 900 years old with one of the most well-known contemporary artists in the world. And then tourists who might only have come to see the Duomo, you know, the San Miniato on the hill, are walking by Palazzo Strozzi and it says sex and solitude in neon, and they're like, this does not conform to my idea of what this city's about at all, but I'm very intrigued. And it's modern and it's innovative. The Manifattura Tabacchi at the other end of the city was funded by a fund called Airmont, Swiss-based, I think, that in another public-private sector initiative, these disused buildings from the late 19th century were completely renovated and converted. They now hold an outpost of the Politecnica, which is Italy's most prestigious fashion university study program. There are subsidized residences for artists and people studying at the university. There's cafes, there's some interesting chefs, there's chef spaces just for pop-up events there. It reminds me a lot of what Karim, if he's here, has done, that not just rebuilding downtown, which I had the privilege of writing about because I found it so inspiring, but also creating spaces where people, I wasn't here during Ramadan, but I remember seeing my entire Instagram feed seemed to migrate over to what, was it Hoda who put that together? Everything that was happening in the Al Ismailia space? That was brilliant. And it made me think that there's already so many inspiring things happening in Cairo that I see along those lines, and it would be amazing to take them out. And do I have time to just give one more really quick example?
Fast.
Italics, please Google this. Italics.art, I believe, is it is a coalition of 60-some, 62, 63 Italian art galleries, born of COVID, from across all antique dealers all the way through to super contemporary art. Victoria Miro, Lorcan O'Neill, Larry Gagosian, people who have presences in Italy because of the Biennale in Venice. They all got together, all the walls between the silos of their disciplines, antiques, old masters, came down, and they bonded together to keep the idea of Italian culture relevant during COVID and post-COVID. They created an event called Panorama. It's a roving 4-day art festival that leverages lesser-known destinations on the Italian peninsula so as to create awareness about those destinations. And every artist brings one work of art. So you have antiques against a Tracy Emin work in a 15th century abandoned cathedral. It's one of the most kind of stimulating, spectacular way of enlivening the culture across all the eras, and takes it out of, you know, the Forum and the Duomo and into a living, breathing version of the country. So lots of case studies, come visit.
Thanks,
I'm
Maria.
not on Italian payroll, I promise you.
We're nearly at the end. I just will ask you for your patience for less than a minute. Lamia Malish. I know that everyone's really hungry. I want to leave you with one thought. So I'm reading right now the new novel by the amazing Nigerian writer Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. It's called Dream Count. It's a book we've all been waiting for 10 years. In it, she describes a conversation between one of the characters and the character's father. And I'm just going to read out this quote. The father says, "My children must carry on. When I die, I want to know the business will continue growing." Once I asked him teasingly, "Why should it matter, Daddy, if you're not going to be here?" He answered, "We want what we've made to stay long after we've gone. That is how we seek immortality." And it struck me that this was an amazing analogy for how to look at Egypt with its majestic and awesome history. It begs the question, how do we shape a future in its shadow? Thank you.